Hello, St. Lucie County 5th graders. This is Mrs. LaShawn Ashton, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be with you today. I will be coming to you on Mondays and Wednesdays, going over what you're doing in your Canvas course for the week. So, today is Monday, April 6th, and I'm going to review what we are doing this week. You are going to be reviewing the text, Can't You Make Them Behave, King George? It's in your Journeys book, but don't worry. Even though you don't have your Journeys book, you have your Canvas course. In your Canvas course today, you will see that the text is uploaded for you. So it'll be just like reading your book. It's highlighted, it's in color, so it's just like having the real thing in front of you. There is also an audio recording of this text, so you can listen to the text if you choose to. Also with this text, we'll be reviewing two standards today. We'll be looking at RI 11 and RI 24. Do you guys remember what those are? I know it's been a little bit, but I'm going to review them with you. RI 11 is quote accurately from a text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text. So let's talk about some of those words in there. Let's talk about accurately from a text. Quote accurately from a text. What do you think that means? Do you remember? That's right. When you quote accurately from a text, you're quoting word for word. So if you're explaining something, you're saying word for word in the text. So you're finding the sentence that explains what that means. Also, when drawing inferences from the text. Do you guys remember what inferencing means? So let me give you an example. If you see an ambulance going down the road and its lights are on and it's going fast, what do you think that means? That's right. They're headed to the hospital or they're headed to help somebody that needs to go to the hospital. So there's some type of an emergency. So we're making an educated guess when we see the ambulance with its lights on driving fast down the road. Then we'll be looking at RI 2.4. RI 2.4 is determine the meaning of general academic and domain-specific words or phrases in a text. So, what does that mean? Do you guys remember? Great. It means that when you come across words, you should understand what they mean. And if you don't, you're using context clues. And we'll talk about context clues a little later. We'll give some examples and we'll work on some together. In your Journeys PDF of this text, there are highlighted words. And those are the words we're going to be looking at. And we'll talk about those in just a second. But before we read anything, I want you to always look at the questions first. It's important to look for the questions because it's setting your purpose for reading. That way you know what you're reading for. So we were going to look at 3 questions today that you're going to actually complete in your Canvas course. Number 1, what was the king surprised by? That's on page 361. Number 2, what important event was announced on page 363? Number 3, which country helped America win the war? On page 366. So we're going to start with that standard first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read pieces to you from those pages. I'm not going to give you the answer because you have to answer them in Canvas for your grades, but we'll talk about it. Okay? You guys ready? Perfect. So the first one says, what was the king surprised by on page 361? So I'm going to read to you 2 paragraphs. And we're going to talk about those 2 paragraphs. What a great idea, King George said. After all, the French and Indian part of the war had been fought on American soil for the benefit of Americans. So why shouldn't they help pay for it? The fact that Americans had also spent money and lost men in the war didn't seem important, nor did the fact that Americans had always managed their own money up to now. They were English subjects, weren't they? Didn't English subjects have to obey the English government? So in 1765, a stamp tax was laid on certain printed items in America. King George was amazed that Americans objected. He was flabbergasted that they claimed he had no right to tax them, just because they had no say in the matter, just because they had no representatives in the English government. What was more, Americans refused to pay. If they agreed to one tax, they said, what would come next? A window tax? A tax on fireplaces? So let's look at the question again. What was the king surprised by? Well, what was he surprised by? I want you to think about it. You guys have some good responses. So I want you to type those responses in your course today. Okay? Perfect. All right, number 2. What important event was announced on page 363? So let's go to 363. And let's see what it says. Instead of July 4, 1776, Americans declared their independence. Naturally, King George was annoyed, but he wasn't worried. How could children, however rebellious, succeed against a firm father? How could a few colonists hold out against a powerful empire? He just sent a few more regiments over and then watched the Americans come around. It never occurred to George III that he might not be right. I wish nothing but good, he once said. Therefore, everyone who does not agree with me is a traitor or a scoundrel. So, what important event was announced on page 363? It's a holiday we celebrate every year in July. I'm giving you a little clue. It says it right there. So, we know what important event happened. And number 3, which country helped America win the war? And that's on page 366. So as you're looking at these, I want you to think about that too, that you're accurately quoting from the text. So if your course is asking you to type it in or to write it in, you need to use the paragraph and the sentence that you're actually quoting on. So you might say, on page 366 in paragraph blank, sentence blank, it states, or you could even say on page 366, it states. No, I don't like any of those. So when you're quoting accurately from a text, that means you're using some citation. So you could say on page 366, it states, or it says, and then type in your answer. So, which country helped America win the war? Let's see. The war dragged on. France, impressed with the victory of Saratoga, joined the war on America's side. There were people in England now who wanted to stop fighting, but not George. No, no, no. Never, never, no independence. No peace without honor. If one group of English colonies got away, what would happen to the others? What would be left of the empire? So, what other country helped America win the war? That's right. You guys are on top of it today. I'm so happy you guys are having such a good experience with virtual school with everything that's going on. It really is nice to see. Okay, so let's move on. Let's go to RI 2.4, which is vocabulary. So let's go to the first word, which is benefit. You will find benefit on the first page of your text right here, where it says benefit, and you'll see it highlighted in your text. It says, what a good idea, King George said. After all, the French and Indian part of the war had been fought on American soil for the benefit of Americans. So why shouldn't they help pay for it? So I'm going to repeat it. What a good idea, King George said. After all, the French and Indian part of the war had been fought on American soil for the benefit of Americans. So why shouldn't they help pay for it? So benefit of Americans. What do you think that means? Good. The benefit them. So to help them. It was done on their soil to help them, to benefit them. Good. Let's look at the next one. Objected. And that's on page 361, right here. It says, King George was amazed that Americans objected. So, I'm not really sure what objected means. So let's use some context clues. I need to read the sentence before and the sentence after to try to help me understand the word. So, in 1765, a stamp tax was laid on certain printed items in America. King George was amazed that Americans objected. He was flabbergasted that they claimed he had no right to tax them. So if I'm reading this correctly, it says Americans objected. It talks about, in the sentence before that, he had a stamp tax for certain printed items in America. So a stamp tax, which means he's making them pay for things printed in America. And the sentence after said, he was flabbergasted that they claimed he had no right to tax them. So no right to tax them. So that means they don't want to be taxed on certain printed items in America. So Americans objected. What does that mean? You guys are so smart. That's absolutely right. They objected. They didn't want it. The Americans did not want to have that tax, so they objected to it. Guys, it has been so nice to be with you. I want you to continue to work on those words that are highlighted, and I want you to go back and look at those pages 361, 363, and 366, to help you answer these questions. You can find them right in the text. It'll be explicitly there for you to answer. I will see you guys on Wednesday, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.